Good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Terrance Drew, members of the media, Mrs. Lanicia Collins-Williams, our sign language interpreter, and to all our viewers and listeners joining us from across St. Kitts and Nevis and throughout the diaspora, welcome. I am Javan Library, Press Secretary to the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to another edition of the Roundtable. This series forms part of the government's signature platforms for open dialogue, transparency, and engagement, where the nation's leader, Prime Minister Drew, sits down with members of the media to discuss issues that matter most to our people. It is through forums like these that we bridge the gap between government policy and public understanding, ensuring that the people remain at the center of national development. Joining us today are representatives from SKNIS, Kailoni Johnson, ZIZ, Roma Richardson, SKN Source, Ebony Brandon, Sugar City FM, Ralston Rankin, Win FM, Yolanda Weeks. And we should be joined shortly by Mr. Andre Huey from SKN Newsline. We thank each of you for being here for this important session. As we prepare to begin, I kindly ask everyone to ensure that their mobile phones are on silent. I'll allow you to do that. And we can move forward by allowing the Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Drew, to deliver his opening remarks.
Thank you. Libud, for your introduction and, of course, making sure that this forum is prepared and give me the opportunity to interface with the representatives from the media and to also speak with you, our people, our citizens, our residents of St. Kitts and Nevis on matters that are very, very important. As normal, I will give a brief update on some matters that are very, very important. And so without delay, I will start with the matter of revenue sharing. I've been asked multiple times on this matter. I have already indicated that the World Bank, which was consulted to give to help to guide that process, has given its position. The cabinet, the federal cabinet has looked at it, and the report was passed on to the Premier of Nevis and the Nevis Island Administration to have their own view of it and to study it as well. And I think that is basically completed on both sides, and thus we will meet, and that information will be shared with you, the public, and the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Let me say, the Constitution is clear in terms of how revenue should be shared between St. Kitts and Nevis. The Constitution has a formula and a method, but basically what it deals with is the taxable revenue, or the tax base, the revenue base, the tax base, or revenue that is had from taxes. And basically, you say the common services, such as national security and so forth, those are paid first. And then what is left, 30% for 25% for Nevis Island Administration and 75% for St. Kitts and Nevis, based on population. So it's based on population that division is made. However, when the CBI became a major income earner or major revenue source for the government, then that became a question as to how those revenues should be shared. Our own position is that the Constitution already give a guideline as to how revenues should be shared. And since a non-tax revenue source is a major part of our income, the decision in principle is to share it exactly how the Constitution says. Anything else outside of that will be a matter of the Constitution being affected. However, I would say that there has been much talk with respect to this, but I've indicated to our own Ministry of Finance that we should make sure that we follow the spirit of the Constitution in terms of sharing the revenues. And so I would say in short order, there will be a meeting between the Nevis Island administration, the federal government, to look at the World Bank's report and to look at the recommendation from the World Bank. Notwithstanding that, I would say that the Constitution already has in it how the revenue of St. Kitts and Nevis should be divided. However, one has to take into account that even though the Constitution did not speak directly to non-taxable revenue, with the CBI proceeds being a major part of our income, I think it's only fair to bring that into serious discussion so that whatever is obtained, a sense of respect for the Constitution and also making sure that there is equity in terms of how we manage the situation. And so I just wanted to update on this. Now, the other update I wanted to give was the update from the Aspire educator training sessions. The Aspire has been ongoing. So far, we have over 5,000 applicants to the Aspire program. And we know that the Aspire program is the financial program where every child in St. Kitts and Nevis between the ages of 5 and 18 would get, I would say, an endowment, a grant, seed money, whichever term we wish to use. 500 would be in savings and 500 would go to buy shares in local companies. That's one component. And thus far, we are increasing our numbers significantly with over 5,000 applications and over 4,000 applications approved and over 4,000 accounts already opened. And so I'm very pleased to say that this is really moving along and catching on. And we have spent thus far on our youth in St. Kitts and Nevis with this revolutionary program over $4 million, and we'll continue to invest in our youth and our young people. We know, of course, there's a similar program in the US that they call the Trump accounts. But of course, our program was launched before. But nonetheless, I think the spirit of that program and this program, that spirit is basically the same, and it's to empower our young people. The thought is we just should not only give our young people, our children, toys, but we should give them accounts and shares so that they can learn from very tender ages how to manage money. But today was a big aspect of it. We had the beginning of Aspire educator training sessions. And that is the first set of training sessions for financial literacy and educational component, and the educational component of the Aspire program. This was done at the central bank because the central bank that has a mandate for financial education is also supporting the Aspire program. And so we had 2 schools there where the pilot is being done. That's the Washington Archibald High School and the Bastia High School. And then there will be a session in Nevis tomorrow where high schools will be involved. Then we will also do the primary schools. We will train the trainers and allow those teachers to teach the rest of the staff who would be involved how to deliver the curriculum. But the curriculum was developed in close collaboration with the central bank, which you know is a premier financial institution which has financial education as part of its mandate. So this is in keeping with the mandate of the central bank as well. As you know, Aspire stands for Achieving Success Through Personal Investment, Resources, and Education. This would help to transform a generation of our people to become very educated, to get the necessary tools for them to build the financial future that they wish to build. So we expect to see people uplifted, families uplifted, communities uplifted, the country and a whole being uplifted. And we'll continue to advance the Aspire program. As you can see here, I have my Aspire pin right here. Continue to promote this revolutionary program for our young people. And so I was given a copy of the curriculum. I was at the first session, and I was able to see at the first session how it will be delivered. And it's being delivered in a very fun way. It is not the children sitting down and reading. They do it. I think one of the game is how to become a millionaire. And they have a program well developed of how to become a millionaire. The children would play. And in that, you'll have the concepts, the financial concept. What is debt? What is an asset? And deep concepts. Is it better to invest in land or vehicle? What is depreciation? What is liquidity? I learned all of that this morning. And in a very fun way. And that is why those terms, of course, I would have known many before, but I'm saying the way it is being delivered is really being delivered in a way that is fun. So the children can play among themselves and learn deeply about finances and how to manage them. They will also get a component of investment, a component of how to handle small businesses, because they will be also given some education around that. And so this will be a program that will really help to transform St. Kitts and Nevis and put us in the next league. Let me say that the only country that I know in the Caribbean and the extensiveness of it in the Western Hemisphere has a program like this is St. Kitts and Nevis. And this we want to shift, of course, our culture here when it comes to handling money and developing a secure financial future. The other one I would like to touch on is I'm the incoming chairman of CARICOM, which will start on January 1st to June 30th, 2026. Presently, the chairmanship is being held by the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Prime Minister Andrew Holness, who was recently re-elected as Prime Minister, and I want to congratulate him. I've done so publicly as well. But so far, I had to fit in for where he could not, and I had the opportunity to chair the first in-person meeting between the African Union and CARICOM. I chaired it with the president of Angola in Addis Ababa. And that meeting was a very, I think, significant meeting. It shows to a great extent the shift that is taking place in terms of St. Kitts and Nevis, or the CARICOM in general, and its connection to Africa. And so basically, I want to say that that is going very, very well. Now, I've been to Africa multiple times in the last year for the Afro-Caribbean Investment Summit, St. Kitts Focus, in Nigeria this year, 2025, in March. And I also went back again for the Afro-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum. The Afrixim Bank annual general meeting, which was also in Abuja, Nigeria. I also traveled to Algeria, where we had the Intra-African Trade Fair. It was a huge fair, and it shows that Africa is really pushing forward to make its mark when it comes to its economic development. And so I also then went on to Addis Ababa when I left Algeria. So I've been to Africa multiple times during this year, and that's really because I believe that there is great value in reconnecting the Caribbean and Africa. Of course, there are cultural links. We are majority in the Caribbean of African descent. We know how we got here through the savages of slavery, chattel slavery, but we are now finding that reconnection. And that would have tangible benefits apart from the cultural and familial benefits. It would also have tangible benefits because Africa has a large growing population. It is the youngest population on the earth, has over 1 billion people. And Africa, by 2050, 1 in every 3 youth on the earth will be an African. That is significant. So it means that Africa is going to drive the new development that the world will see. And therefore, that we must also be a part of as well. In Addis Ababa, of course, I had the opportunity to visit the palace of Emperor Haile Selassie, which is in excellent condition, and was able to see the crowns and his garments, his original office, his original carriages, his original train, his original vehicles, and so forth. And so you got a sense of how he lived even back then. And what struck me was how developed and mature that the palace in its operations would have been. And that really tells me why Italy could not defeat Ethiopia under his leadership, because of that level of what I will call sophisticated governance. And it was right in Africa. I also had the opportunity to visit Shashamani. Shashamani, as you know, was an area designated by Emperor Haile Selassie for Black people from the West if they wanted to return to Africa. And I met a lot of Caribbean people and people of Caribbean descent still living in Shashamani. And so that was very, I would say, eye-opening and give me an opportunity to see how our people moved back and to see how they integrated and lived with their brothers and sisters of Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a huge country, one of the most populated countries on earth. And therefore, one would expect that a country like that can have tremendous impact on the direction of Africa in general. In Ethiopia, I would say when you're in Addis Ababa, you can't tell that you're not in some place in North America or Europe. It's developing very, very, very quickly. And it would be a place that I think people should get the opportunity to see and to explore. And so I would say to a great extent that the trip to Addis Ababa was an excellent one. I also traveled to Algeria, where the fair was, the Intra-African Trade Fair. And that, of course, shows where Africa is heading at this particular time. So with those things, I would say that it had been a tremendous and very positive visit. The other matter I would like to touch on is that I was recently at the United Nations. And at the United Nations, I had the opportunity to present on behalf of St. Kitts and Nevis, which I did, and I think the speech was made available as well. But I had the opportunity there to meet leaders from around the world and making those connections. Those connections are very, very important to make. That is where you get the opportunity to collaborate and build relationships to benefit St. Kitts and Nevis, and of course to benefit their country as well. Coming out of those meetings over the years, I think we have benefited directly by meeting with other countries or by meeting in the margin of the General Assembly with other organizations of the UN, where I think a lot of collaboration can be made. For example, I met with the Foreign Minister of Germany, and in that meeting, we discussed what we was looking at, climate mobility, which we are champions, international champions for, and we hosted a meeting together. And I think that that would have had a tremendous impact, and we will see the tangible benefits from that as well. In addition to that, I was able to go to the Clinton Institute, so to speak, where we were able to interact in the health space and start to make collaboration with respect to climate change and health and so forth, so that we can see the tangible benefits right here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And I think to a great extent, I wouldn't get into details because so many things to get into. But apart from that, I was able to meet our people from St. Kitts and Nevis right there in New York as we celebrated our independence. And then I traveled over to Canada to meet with our people before returning home. So I say during the month of September, where we celebrated our independence and our connections that we would have done with respect to African continent, United Nations, and connecting with our own people in North America, I think would have had a tremendous positive impact on where we want to take St. Kitts and Nevis. But before we get into the questions, those are the things that I wanted to update and I will give the press, of course, the opportunity to ask me what questions they may ask. Mr. Press Secretary.
Honorable Prime Minister, good afternoon. Ralston Rankin, Sugar City FM. Honorable Prime Minister, last year I asked a question on the St. Peter's, the new health center, and when the construction work will resume. You gave a timeline around September last year, but it's September this year. So I'd like you to update as to on that. And my second question, I got word from a reliable source that the Ritz-Carlton is no longer interested in St. They've actually pulled out over the course of the weekend. If that is the case, could you let us know as to what was the reason? Or if it's not the case, could you also give us an update as to what's taking place with that project?
Right. So let me tell you a couple of things on that. One, when we look at the matter of the health center in St. Peter's, I think that I was clear on it. I said there were some legal issues that were blocking it. In the last administration, there was a breakdown between Public Works and the contractor and all sorts of things legally that's affecting the project. However, we did not stop there. We went and we refurbished completely the St. Peter's Health Center that is there. So that was always tentative depending on the outcome of the case. So I think you should let me complete that statement that had to be, that was premised on the resolution of the impasse, the legal impasse between both. The second thing is there is an issue which Skelton is ready to build. We know that there are persons over there. Let me make it clear, and I think we have made it clear. The land over there is private land, has nothing to do with us. With Skelton, of course, not with Skelton, the developers who are bringing it, they have invested their money in it. I spoke to them, and I wouldn't say that they have not pulled out of the project. They have invested significant amount. What has happened there is that there is a matter with persons who had been there. Let me give you the background on that. In 2017, there was thought that a development would come there. And the previous administration, PAM, CCM, and PLP, asked the bar owners to move and would have given them a place in Frigate Bay. The issue was whatever they put forward about the developers, that did not materialize. However, this administration, in its thrust to diversify the economy, sought to get investments in St. Kitts and Nevis, and the investors saw what we were doing and they felt confident to come into St. Kitts and Nevis to invest. However, there are two bars over there, and the bars happen to be on private land. And so that is, of course, everybody knows, caused some upset for the investors. This is a $250 million investment. Will be one of the best private property hotel space in the Caribbean period. The question is asked, isn't that a good development we want in St. Kitts and Nevis? And what we're going to seek to do, or what we're seeking to do already, is to give options to those who are the vendors who have their businesses there. Because at the time, based on the law, they are squatters. They're on private land. That land had been private land for decades. It had never been bought by the government. And therefore, I wouldn't say that the developers have pulled out. They just want the matter to be resolved. The government's position is this, and we will ask our people, do we want a premier hotel to be here? Do we want a hotel that will create, in its construction, hundreds of jobs, and in its operation, hundreds of permanent jobs? It will put St. Kitts on the map with one of the premier institutions in terms of the hotel space in the Caribbean. Is it unreasonable to want that in St. Kitts and Nevis? That can't be unreasonable. But the other thing is, it's not even government land, it's private land. So why would someone want to occupy somebody's private land? But however, I am empathetic with those who are having the bars there. And we will give them an option to move to a different site and also assist them in moving. That is what the government will do, so that it can be a win-win situation. But if we are to stop a private entity from investing $250 million on private land in St. Kitts and Nevis, we would ask the question, are we serious about development, advancement, and diversification on these lands that are designated for major development? We have to ask ourselves that question. How can, if somebody has private land and you can just go on the person's private land and stop them from developing the private land, why would you come to St. Kitts and Nevis? This will be an unfavorable environment in which to invest. Everybody wants that development in their country. And so we believe that those who are there should be given the opportunity to continue their trade and give them a place or offer them a place, but they were offered a place on the PAM, PLP, and CCM coalition to go to Frigate Bay. For some reason, they did not move. And for the other reason, that coalition did not really attract any investor. And so we are going to resolve the matter in a win-win situation so that the squatting situation can be taken care of, so that those who are there can have the opportunity to continue to be business people and to give them an option, and the government would assist them in moving where they would have to move to, and to resolve the matter of the squatting on the land where they're at this time. So I think there's an opportunity for win-win. But I think if you were to look at it and look at the economic impact that this can have, this is a tremendous economic impact. And I don't think it would be reasonable to think that it is not wise to attract a premier hotel brand to St. Kitts and Nevis at this time, especially when we are seeking to diversify from CBI and to establish all these major investments that are coming to St. Kitts and Nevis. I ask that they not, as far as possible, not be connected to CBI, because we have to diversify our economy. We are strengthening our CBI, and our CBI was judged #1 again, even though people were saying all sorts of other things, but we made sure we made the necessary changes to strengthen it and to let our international partners that we are serious about security and to strengthen our program while attracting investments. That is what we are seeking to do. So it's not unfair to the vendors at all. And we will help the vendors to move, and we will assist the vendors to move as well, so that that major development can continue. Can you imagine hundreds of jobs in construction? The impact will be an increase of about 2% of GDP. All the other countries around the region trying to get it, but we were able to negotiate it and get it here, just as we have negotiated Safe Harbor, which is the largest and most prestigious marine business in the world that operates in places like Monaco and so forth. We are trying to transition St. Kitts to that high-end type of business and hotel business, and the hospitality space, the yachting space, the cruise ship space, wherever the space is, so that we can grow the economy. That is what we're doing. And so basically, I will say to our people that the land has always been private land, because I have been asked. And to go back, there was some nationalization of the land that took place under our first national hero, His Excellency Robert Bradshaw. That area in the peninsula was not nationalized. That is why it stayed in private hand. So private people bought it. And so that has nothing to do with the nationalized land, because people are mixing it up and saying this land it was taken back. It was never. So I want to set the record straight. So I want to say clearly, we are going to look for a win-win situation, help the vendors or those who have businesses to go to a place that is conducive, and to assist them even in moving to where they have to, and then allow this hotel development to continue. It is major. It's going to transform St. Kitts and Nevis, put us on the map, and therefore, any reasonable person who acts in St. Kitts and Nevis, isn't this the type of development that we need? High-end type of businesses where our people can get good jobs, stable jobs, and advance our GDP and economy and the prestige of the country to be able to attract these type of investors. And so that is our position on it, and we will be acting on that so that the hoteliers or developers can have their private land to develop this great type of business they're trying to establish. Let me say in St. Kitts and Nevis, anything that is developed, the government always have total control. Nobody can come and take your land. And I ask the question, you come, you build a hotel. Let's say you violate our laws. You can't take up the hotel and go with it. You can't. Where are you going to go with it? You can't. But we must create an environment of investment. Otherwise, the country is not going to go anywhere. So how can you stop a $250 million development on private land? People would look at me as Prime Minister and the government and say, are y'all serious about governance? You didn't have to give these people any land. They bought it on the private market. This land had always been private. They're bringing their money. They're not asking you for your CBI. And they're going to build a hotel that is on the top of a top class. Provide hundreds of jobs in construction for 3-4 years. And then hundreds of jobs after that. How can you not promote something like that? And at the same time, make sure that you take care of your nationals who would have squatted there. I mean, they might have squatted because, of course, they want to make an income. But just like the last administration did, they sought to give them a place, but the only reason why they didn't go forward is that they did not attract any investor. We have attracted an investor. And therefore, we will reposition our people peacefully and to give them all the assistance they need so that the development can continue. So they can do their business and the development on private land can continue and it will be a win-win. And that is what we envisage, of course.
Mr. Prime Minister, Barbados and a few other islands of the region have activated the free movement of people regime.
Yes.
Have the St. Kitts Nevis government decided or made a decision as to if we are going to join this soon? And there was an issue at the hospital a few weeks ago regarding dialysis patients and their treatment. Please clarify the situation and say whether the issue have been rectified.
Right.
Thank you.
So let me answer the last question first to break it. Our dialysis center, which was started under the first Labour administration, presently has 2 nephrologists. We are also launching a transplant program. All we need right now are the patients. We have everything in place for transplant to take place in St. Kitts and Nevis. The third matter is the matter of dialysis machines. We have an extremely high number of dialysis machines so that we can put them in rotation and take them out. This dialysis center serves both St. Kitts and Nevis because there's no dialysis in Nevis. We have done all of that to strengthen it. What you might have heard is that the specific fluid we use, that we had to get in, but it didn't stop. We made sure what they did is to make sure that during the transition of getting that fluid, it can happen from time to time that people will still be able to dialyze. And so we got, I think, 30 cases, and in another 30 cases, 60 cases. And then, because only 2 countries in the Caribbean that use that type, might be us and Grenada. And then we have, I think the 8th of this month, we'll have hundreds of cases coming in, or well over 100. So the matter is not only, so these are the ebbs and flow of a service of this type, highly specialized service that we offer. So these matters in terms of the ebb and flow of things can happen. What I've picked up is there are those out there who just want to seem like they want to see everything fail, but everything ain't gonna fail. And so if there is an issue in the ebb and flow of things, there is an exaggeration of what is taking place. That is what is happening. And so they want to create a sense of, oh, what is happening here? Things falling apart. And people who are looking from outside to see, we have one of the highest number of dialysis machines per capita in terms of patients. We have 2 nephrologists launching a transplant program. And they would say, so what is the issue in terms of the ebb and flow of things? Just recently when I was talking at Dr. His Excellency Edmund Lawrence's homegoing ceremony, a patient collapsed in the church. I was at the podium. I took out my phone to call the EMS. And then all over social media, saying it's falling apart, Prime Minister on phone. But I was on the phone to call the EMS to possibly save a life. That is how anxious people are to report something bad about the government and bad about their country. And so we as Kittitians and Nevisians, we have to guard against this cynicism and this cynical approach, because at the end of the day, this is your country. And these are obvious misrepresentation of what are facts. And so I call on the media to also clarify these facts. Because I'm happy you asked that question, but then that question can also be directed quickly to the dialysis unit at the hospital and get the facts behind the matter. And realize these are ebb and flows of normal things. To this, they can call me and say a machine breakdown at the hospital. That can happen. The CT scan machine, which is one of the most advanced in the whole region, it could stop working tonight for whatever technical reason. But does that mean the whole thing is falling apart? Is that something to say, CT scan machine stop work, think it's falling apart? A CT scan machine does stop working all sorts of places. But they would not report the St. Kitts as one of the most advanced CT scan machines in the whole region. But they're waiting for something to go wrong, to say, oh, see there. And so some people have taken on this aura of want to report and exaggerate things to the point where they want to embarrass their country. And so when people come here, people are like, this is the St. Kitts that some of them talking about. They can't believe. Just last night, I was with those who came in for the laboratory, reunion or the event, and they say this is a beautiful country. Look at this. That is why we chose St. Kitts. Look at this. They're very impressed, and therefore, I would say with all of that, that it was there are those who want to report and to exaggerate everything that happens in the ebb and flow of things. And so I would say that we need to guard ourselves against that. Your other question was? Right. So on the free movement matter, let me say that it has been an issue with CARICOM, and we are studying it, as I've said before. There are some conditions to be met in terms of the smaller countries, so that we can still have some protection within the free movement. And so we are working towards those. And then a conversation will also needs to be had with our people here in St. Kitts and Nevis so that we understand it and its implications. And so when we would have gathered all of that information, CARICOM would have responded and so forth, then we take it to all, and then we decide go forward. Until then, we have held back on that. So that does not include St. Kitts and Nevis.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. The question I have to ask is with relation to your trip to the UN. Mm-hmm. It was very exciting to watch. If persons would have watched all the various speeches and engagements, and St. Kitts and Nevis was pretty consistent with its stance on Taiwan, pretty consistent with its stance on Haiti. I'm wondering, however, in the context of some of the larger global issues which are taking place, we're looking at the issue with Israel and Palestine right now, and the recognition of the Palestinian state. St. Kitts and Nevis, I believe, is one of those who has already recognized the Palestinian state. Correct. However, what is our small voice in the Caribbean on these issues? And what impact do we really have at fora like the United Nations, when it tends that unless there is Mia Motley, for example, who already has a lot of international currency and various other, we are not really heard. What are we doing to ensure that these platforms give us global voice on major issues taking place in the world? That would be my first question. The other question that I would ask at this time has to do specifically with Haiti itself. What, if anything, are we seeing in respect of a resolution to that situation in Haiti? I ask that because in as much as it is good that we are reconnecting with our African roots, we have issues right here in our own region that need attention. And so how, if at all, are we leveraging these new relationships with African nations to bring light to and/or influence what is taking place in Haiti right now, if that's even possible at all?
Right. So let me clarify a few things for you. And the United Nations matter. And I think we need to know how the United Nations work. In every country has a vote within the United Nations. And that vote is critically important. And it must not be taken for granted. A lot of things that happen around the world, it is because the CARICOM is 15 votes. The CARICOM represents 15 votes at the United Nations. So it means, therefore, that any position that we hold in CARICOM can actually carry within the United Nations. And that must never be underestimated or underrated. For example, we look at what was held in Nice, France, the BBNJ. St. Kitts co-chaired that. That was something that was dead for a long time. Well, I would say St. Kitts influenced that and helped to revive it with Ireland. So, and so I was among those countries that did that, and I want to thank the permanent representative to the United Nations and her team, Dr. Mutrice Williams, Her Excellency. Not only that, if you look at it, she also at one point was chairing this session at the UN. That is how influential this is. Many things in the UN are voted on. For example, where would you have the expo? Whoever gets the most votes on the floor gets the expo. The expo for countries represents billions of dollars. Your vote, your voice, your representation means a lot. And so that must never, ever be taken for granted, because it is not the talk that determines the direction of the United Nations. It is not. If I ask you, you can't even remember, or you may not even watch the Chinese presentation. But the Chinese is on the Security Council and have a lot of influence. In the Security Council on the matter of Haiti, the question was raised. I met with countries and said, you are in the Security Council, and we want a resolution on Haiti. And they would say, Mr. Prime Minister, and they're from much larger countries and bigger countries, but we can sit down and negotiate how we are going to share responsibility around the world. For us in CARICOM, Haiti is a critical matter. And I can say today that a resolution from the Security Council for the first time has been passed on Haiti. And we are going to see the tangible benefits of that. So we can't abandon the UN process, because had we not gone there and taken that position, who would? Maybe nobody. And matters of, for example, Antigua was leading on issues to do with blindness and sight. Your Antigua's permanent representative to UN, he is one who is blind. And I supported him, of course. And when you see who we were able to bring into the room, and for the first time, we had a declaration, an international declaration on blindness from the UN. And it came from a representative who is from a small island as well in the Caribbean, who was able to do that. So we have to go there and advocate for what our issues are. The sea is important for us. We advocate for the sea. Not only that, we as the CARICOM have led with the Pacific nations when it comes to climate justice. And we got a ruling from the International Court to say that climate is a matter of justice, and those who perpetrate these practices that damage the climate, they owe us. You got that ruling. And so now when you sit with people who want to go to the Security Council, you say, for you to get St. Kitts and Nevis's vote, what is your position on this? Because that is a big, big achievement. So it is really in the negotiations, it is in diplomacy, it is in the quiet halls of the UN that you get things like these. It is not always, the speeches have very little impact, really. It has to do with how are you going to promote exactly what you need. So we were able to get that. I'm one of the champions on climate mobility, along, I told you, with Germany and so forth. And we're a small country, but we're able to bring significant people in the room and promote that. And we're already seeing the benefits from that. Because from that meeting, Germany said, this is what we will give. Let's look at the Green Climate Fund. The Green Climate Fund is who is helping to fund the geothermal in Nevis. The Green Climate Fund is who is now going to fund a $40 million agricultural program here in St. Kitts and Nevis. The Green Climate Fund is also funding our water security here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and we are now doing the consultations. So as people ask, how a small country like St. Kitts and Nevis can get all of these things? And we have been able to do that because, of course, of diplomacy, collaboration, and I will also say, because of this, we are really punching above our weight. So that is how the UN space works. It works as diplomacy, it is negotiations, it is reaching common ground, common understanding on things, and we should never, ever take this for granted. who will advocate for us. So I think coming out of the UN, we should see what the St. Kitts and Nevis has gotten and what St. Kitts. I was able to meet with the Prime Minister of the Netherlands. Statia is here. Seba is here. We need to discuss the maritime boundaries and how we relate between Statia and Seba. He's the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, the Prime Minister of Statia and Seba. Who else would negotiate that if we don't go and put our point forward? Next thing, they do all sort of things, and we are losing land, water here and water there. We have to maintain our space. So we might be small, but we have our positions that we have to protect. And so we must never take those things for granted. So that is why the space in the UN is so important. It is the work that you do to make sure you get the outcome that you need. And I touch on the case of Haiti. If we had not gone to Africa, which force is in Haiti right now? It's an African force, Kenya. Because we met with the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister of Kenya, no, President of Kenya, and we said to him, we don't have the forces in the Caribbean. Can Kenya lead an international force to help Haiti? It's not perfect, but they left Africa to come to Haiti because CARICOM reached out to Kenya. That is what is happening. So CARICOM work has brought that force in. CARICOM work has gotten the resolution in the Security Council. So now the UN has to take it up. Had we not been there, had we not been doing the diplomatic work and the negotiations and so forth, these things that we have achieved for Haiti would not have been achieved. And Haiti, it is very bad, but there would be almost zero hope based on where it is going now. But we know that there is hope because now we have the support of the world, because we're able to draw attention to it as CARICOM. So, yes, at the level of the UN, we must make sure that we are present and we must push our issues. Our issues climate change, our issues financing, our issues to make sure that there is equity and so forth. Are we getting everything that we need? No, because they're the bigger countries who tend to want to take more. But it gives you a space where your voice can be heard, not just speaking, but in terms of your diplomacy and what you can do to get it. And because the Caribbean and Africa have united, we have another decade where the UN recognized people of African descent. That in itself has started multiple things happening in spaces. For example, connection of Caribbean and Africa. The African Bank, for example, and the investment that is bringing here. What is happening with us and Nigeria? What is happening to us and the other countries that I've visited? The fact that we now connected with Tanzania and Kenya, and I'm going to Cape Coast University next year that's located in Ghana. These things are critically important because if they are not done by us, if we're not our own advocates, if we don't collaborate to make sure that things are done, things that might seem would have, I would say things that we achieve would not have been achieved if we were not to take this type of approach of making sure that we do the necessary work.
Good afternoon, everyone. Prime Minister, regarding the establishment of the Eastern Caribbean CBI regulatory framework, can you share whether the framework was established collectively by the Caribbean countries themselves, or whether it was shaped largely in response to external expectations, such as those from the US and Europe? And then my second question is, congratulations, of course, on being recognized as one of the most influential people of African descent. How do you see this recognition translating into deeper Africa-Caribbean cooperation, particularly in the areas of trade, investment, and people-to-people relations that you've been championing?
All right, thank you very much for those questions that you asked. If I were to go back to the one that you asked with respect to MIPAD, again, you see, I'm from the smallest country in the CARICOM, but I was recognized by MIPAD. And I was interviewed by one of the CNN anchors. Again, because people who pay attention to these things understand what is taking place. Sometimes we here may not recognize it right away, but they recognize what we are doing. They recognize what this connection is triggering as well. and the implications of such. So my very aggressive approach to reconnecting the Caribbean and Africa, to a great extent, is resonating in areas that recognize what is taking place. This type of relationship has the great potential of positioning two regions to create a new paradigm in terms of trade, diplomacy, collaboration that would have significant impact internationally. Why? In 2050, Africa and people of African descent, one of every 3 youths on the planet will be either African or African descent. That include us. It means, therefore, that if there's collaboration between Africa mainland and its diaspora, and we are going to be that majority in just a few years, that means that there will be a shift in the world order. That is what this relationship really is going to result in, a shift in the world order. And those who understand the impact that that can have are those who are really recognizing what is taking place. It will be a natural shift, because if 1 in every 3 youths will be African descent, and they are conscious of who they are, and they are bringing a different reality to the world itself will be impacted. Africa has over 1.5 billion people. In the CARICOM, there are countries in Africa that have a greater population than the whole of CARICOM. OECS doesn't even have 1 million people living at this particular time. What does also means is that we in St. Kitts and Nevis should not just be thinking of a 50-something thousand market. We should be thinking of a billion people market. So we have to expand our mind and see as well how we can benefit from a relationship between CARICOM and Africa. The tangible benefits already started to be seen, as I told you before. Our connection with Open University of Tanzania, our connection with TVET, Kenya, our connection with Cape Coast University, which is a top university in the west of Africa. The fact that we had cultural exchange with Africa, West Coast Africa, especially Nigeria. The fact that the Nigerian president came to the region. The fact that I have visited and others have visited Africa. The fact that the African Bank is setting up a multi-million-dollar trade center in the region. Just the trade alone, the diplomatic reconnection alone, those things are going to have their own impact, and they're already having. For example, reparations. You have 54, 55 countries in Africa, and you have all these countries in CARICOM, and they decide to take the issue of reparations to the United Nations. It will be placed on the agenda because you have the critical number to put it on the agenda. If we are divided and we don't forge this, we can't get the issue of reparations on the agenda of the UN. When it's on the agenda of the UN, then people will be asked to vote on this. And when they're asked to vote on that, that has its own implications. So this is the impact that this type of relationship would have. So these issues that people of Africa and African descent are suffering, coming together allows that unification and that, I would say, common platform to pursue these things. This relationship allows those things to be expressed at the United Nations and the international level. And so they understand, and that is why I think they would have considered giving me this award. I think that the benefits of it will be had long after I'm gone, because it's now started. This is something that was spoken of for many, many years, but we are now seeing it really happening and coming together. And that is why we are looking at flights between Western Africa and Caribbean. If we were to establish that, and you were to get 2-3 planes per week from any African country, 1 plane per week from any African country, do you know what that would do to tourism? Just think about that alone. Because our trade with Africa is 1% of our total trade, 1%. So if nothing else happened and we are able to increase that trade from 1% to 10%, those tangible benefits, those alone will help to start to transform the region, taking it up to 10%. Recently, we needed some more nurses, but instead of going directly to the Philippines, we have gone to Ghana. And then we have Ghanaian nurses here coming to St. Kitts and Nevis in the next few months. That's a tangible benefit. So these are the kind of things that we are talking about. Our teachers are going to be in the Open University of Tanzania. That's powerful in itself. I want to see our students go to Cape Coast University, a top university in Africa, and a very high-ranking university overall in Ghana. And we are exploring that. So the tangible benefits to be had are going to be tremendous. And therefore, we trade with other regions and we respect our regions. Why not trade with Africa as well? So to your question, these things will have tangible benefits for our people. And I will say to our people, as trade continue to expand, please let us remember we can cater to over 1 billion people on the African continent as well. So that in a sense, our smaller markets are not the limits to what we can do, but that we have access to this. And that is what we are seeking to do. And lastly to say, St. Kitts and Nevis is the first country outside of ECOWAS to get visa-free access to Nigeria. Do you know what that was? That was tremendous diplomacy. That is a tremendous achievement because, again, it opens up the door for trade, people-to-people contact, all these things in an untapped market, so to speak, so that our people can have the opportunity to really benefit tangibly. But I will say, in the next 6 months, can you imagine you'll have teachers say, well, I just complete advanced studies with the University of Tanzania? 30 of them. Tremendous. All right. Mm-hmm. Yes.
My first question, it was about the Eastern Caribbean CBI regulatory framework and whether it was designed by Caribbean countries themselves or was influenced externally.
Well, let me say that we set up the regulatory framework. It's always the best thing to do. I think it came from us in its essence, because we all have CBI programs and we recognize that there are matters that we would want to really bring on the regulatory body so that the industry can be protected, just like the central bank. The reason why we think along that line, we have a central bank, and that central bank oversees all the countries in the OECS. So we have a framework already of having a unified regulatory institution to help us to be even more viable as a region. And so this is one of them. We collaborated with our international partners because our international partners see our program, they would have their own questions to ask. And so we collaborated with them because, again, we are not operating in a vacuum. We are operating in a world where what we do here can have an impact on another country. And therefore, that has to be taken into consideration as well. So we also did consultation with our international partners for us to set up the regulatory body. We have all signed to agree to set it up. We have laid it in Parliament. I think Antigua has laid it, but we are going to complete it, all of us, by the end of this month so that that regulatory body can start to function and really help us to strengthen our CBI program, not just strengthen, but to protect it as well, and to let our international partners who think they might be impacted by it, for them to recognize as well how serious we are in terms of creating an industry or strengthening an industry that has benefited us tremendously. So yes, it has, but it's fundamentally from us here in the Caribbean.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister, colleagues. Yes. I'll just piggyback a bit on my colleague's question about the relationship with Africa. Mm-hmm. You mentioned a number of tangible benefits that have already begun to show success. But how confident are you that we will get that buy-in from the ordinary man, the students, to encourage them to seek a university in somewhere in Nigeria, in Africa, in lieu of the traditional United States, the UK? How confident are you that we are going to get that buy-in from the normal people in St. Kitts and Nevis? Right. And the second question, as you mentioned, you met with diaspora groups while you were in the United States as well as in Toronto. I know the government has been making a push for our citizens in the diaspora to look at St. Kitts as a place to invest, to assist in our own development. While there, did you get that sense that this strategy is working and that the people out there are willing to help their homeland develop going forward?
Right. Thank you very much for those two questions. Well, let me start with the diaspora and let me recognize our people in the diaspora, first of all. I have said to them that they're part and parcel of St. Kitts and Nevis. Even though they don't live here physically, they can still contribute to their country's development. I gave the example of the dialysis machines. Do you know who got us all those dialysis machines? A gentleman by the name of Leo Estridge, who is a Kittitian and a specialist technician in dialysis machines in Canada. When we first got into office, we had a dearth of dialysis machines. We had lacked the lines. He heard the cries of the people. I was connected to him, and from there, we were able to reach to the point where he brought his colleagues down. They trained our people, and with that, he supplied us with so much dialysis machines we have even to give away. That is a tangible, I would say, investment of our people in our country. Not a monetary investment, but an investment in our health so that we can take care of our people. So our diaspora is already bought into it. That's just one example. We have Dr. Amory, who comes and does colonoscopy at very low cost. We have with us now Dr. Hadia Claxton, Her Excellency, who has done tremendous. She started, is Trail the Blaze or Blaze Trail? Trailblazers. She started that from the diaspora. She was very instrumental in helping to secure Safe Harbor. Very instrumental in securing the Tabasco project. This is one Kittitian. And look at what she has done. And Southern University. She's the one who secured that for us, one person from the diaspora. Mr. Calvin St. Just, who now heads our CBI, I took him all off Wall Street. He was working on Wall Street. I said, look, the country needs you. And he left that to come to run our CBI program and has worked tremendously hard to transform it to where it's going today. People in the diaspora. I met people who continue to send stuff home, who continue to contribute in different ways to our country. And so I continue to encourage them to give back. What about Dr. Frank Laws? Dr. Frank Laws, who is a cardiologist, a specialist in electrophysiology and also interventional cardiology. A combination of both is very rare in the United States. Very rare period in the United States. And he helped us through his connection help us to secure the most advanced CT scan in the Caribbean right now. And he's helping us to secure the most advanced MRI machine that will be in the Caribbean in some months. This is Dr. Frank Laws contributing to his country's development, even though he's in the diaspora. I say all of that to show tangible examples of how the diaspora is helping in our country's advancement. And so I want to encourage them to continue to give. So the buying is already there. What we have to now do is create more opportunities. For example, there's a group called what? OALI, La Amiga OALI group, that just gives scholarships to a number of young people here. And just had an event in New York, a group that Tao is a part of. Willa Liebert, who just spoke at our Prime Minister's lecture. And she's now helping to help us with telling our story. So I can go on and on and on with our people in the diaspora who are contributing to national development. And if I did not mention a name, I said to them all the time, I cannot mention all the names at every occasion, but I think that their contributions should be highlighted every chance given. So now the next step with respect to that now is how are we going to create opportunities for them to be able to continue to help to develop St. Kitts and Nevis. We are going to create what you call a diaspora bond, a financial bond, and we're going to offer it to our people in the diaspora and give them the opportunity to invest directly in their country. That type of instrument we will do. Do you know who I got the idea from? The president of Nigeria. When I sat with him on his birthday at the presidential palace in Nigeria. That idea. He said, we had a good frank talk, and that's one of the things he raised. And I looked at it and said, I spoke to people in the Ministry of Finance and see how it worked. And that's them leveraging their diaspora And he said it was oversubscribed. They had to shut it down. And so we want to offer this to our people in diaspora to invest in St. Kitts and Nevis as well. And so I can go on and on of people in the diaspora who are investing in St. Kitts and Nevis. So the buying is already there. And I gave those tangible examples to show. Now you asked another question about the Africa and how you can convince people to study. Let me say, the University of the West Indies was not always there. In the very early years of our development, our people used to go to the UK principally to study until the University of the West Indies was started. There were people who doubted going to the University of the West Indies. When Taiwan started, people doubted. When Morocco started, people doubted. Anytime you open up a new area, there are going to be doubts and questions, and these are logical. But in time, it will take on a life of its own. And so this will also do that. So we are not telling people not to take opportunities where they can get them. What we are doing is expanding opportunities. So while you have all these opportunities, this is also an option. So this is not closing the door in the United States or Canada, any other place. We're just saying that this too is also an option for our people to be able to go to Africa and study at excellent African universities and institutions. And so I think it would work. I think and it would work for the fact that when people get exposed and knowing the quality of education that they would get, it will eventually sell itself. So there is some skepticism and there is some, what is this about? Because this is a new paradigm. But anytime you start something new, this is what happens. But that is fine, because it should be like that. The questions should be asked, and people should look at it from multiple angles to make sure that whatever they would do would be the best thing for them. But I would say that this would be no different from any other new venture that would have been pursued by our country before. Cuba. Cuba was a big one. You go into Cuba, communist Cuba, so. I went to Cuba. And they say, oh, you went to Cuba, so you can go to the United States to study and so forth. And I went to the United States. And nothing wrong with asking those questions. It's just that we have to be bold enough to embark on these new opportunities so that our people can always have options. And so this is another option for our people. So I look forward. I'm going to Ghana next year. I'm going to Cape Coast University. I met the vice president of Ghana, who was the vice chancellor of Cape Coast University. She was. And we have at Cape Coast University a Caribbean corner, St. Kitts focus. We're the first country. Again, size does not matter, but how you work it. So they're seeing all of this that is being done by a very small country. They're respecting it because you're pushing the boundaries, but it's okay. But you're pushing it for positivity and for benefits of all of our people.
No, Prime Minister, my last two questions. While you're in Africa, I'm going to go along the lines of food security. Will we or are we looking to Africa in terms of food products or trades or anything of that sort? Also, the reason why I asked that question is because the press conference that we had with the ministers and yourself, the Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas mentioned that rather than looking, let's say, North America, we can look right in the region, and he gave one specific country, as in Guyana. Guyana produces a lot of food. So I want you to explain, like, if we are actually going to be, working with Africa in terms of food, and also, if we're going to look on the region as well, because there's some issues that our farmers are facing here. I'm not going to touch on that now, but yeah. And my second question: in your opening statement, you mentioned that the fair share report.
I don't call it fair share.
I'll use your words.
I call it revenue sharing.
Revenue sharing. I'll use your words. My apologies. Right. Revenue sharing report will be available to the public. Will the public get an update as to how many revenue as a CBI brought in for this year as well, if that can be disclosed?
Yes,
as well?
that will be disclosed. It's
Right,
disclosed every year in the budget. The revenue for the CBI is disclosed every year in the budget. So it's not a secret. If you go back to the last budget, I revealed it. I also revealed how many CBI investors we would have had. I revealed the number. So it's not a secret at all. So if you go back, you would see that I have revealed that. So to answer your question on the CBI, it will be revealed, and it's always revealed in the budget, at least when I'm there. On the matter of I think you asked about the fair share matter. You asked about the fair share, but it is revenue sharing. Yeah. And the reason why I use revenue sharing, it is because that is exactly what it is. And so we are, as I told you before in my opening, that we are on a trajectory to deal with it. And it is very, very important that it is handled in a particular way. As I said before, the Constitution already said how revenues are supposed to be shared between St. Kitts and Nevis. That was negotiated in for the 1983 Constitution, the Independence Constitution. On the one hand, you had the Premier of Nevis, was His Excellency National Hero, Sir Simeon Daniel. And on the other hand, you had the first Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, National Hero as well, Sir Dr. Kennedy Simmons. And they negotiated this constitution. Let me say, for history, you had the leader of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party, who was the former premier at that time, Sir Llewellyn Moore, who in the discussion on the Constitution speak to things like these. He was largely ignored. There's a document that we will soon reveal, make popular, the discussions around the Constitution. I think now, if I can find it, I will tell you the discussion that took place around the Constitution. And hardly anything that Sir Llewellyn Moore, who was a legal luminary, he was ignored. And a lot of the things are coming back to bite us. Report of St. Kitts and Nevis Constitutional Conference. It is right here. I have it right here. And here you will see the different positions being put forward. This report of St. Kitts, St. Christopher and Nevis Constitutional Conference, London, December 1982. And in the Constitution, let me get back to the main point, they discuss how you're going to share revenue. And I think it's in chapter 10 of the Constitution, if you were to go to it, it discusses Nevis, that Nevis will have a Nevis Island administration. There will be no St. Kitts Island administration. So in the Constitution, you have a Nevis, you have a St. Kitts Nevis, but you don't have a St. Kitts. There is no St. Kitts in the Constitution. And that is one of the things that Sir Llewellyn Moore highlighted. How can you just exclude St. Kitts from the Constitution? And in that, the discussion about how you should manage resources, such as land. The land on Nevis is managed by the Nevis Island Administration. Where the federal government comes in is issues to do with national security, customs, and so forth. That's it. And it's right in the Constitution if you're there. And therefore, that is why I want to really take this opportunity to speak to it, because there needs to be a broader discussion on the Constitution as far as resource management in Nevis is concerned, as far as how you're going to share revenue, because the Constitution has a formula. It says it. And I think it is correct to have a discussion on non-tax revenue, because the CBI revenues make up a large part of our overall revenue. And I respect that. And I respect that coming forward. But I'm saying all of that to say, basically, that when it comes to that, it will be shared. Discussions are taking place, and the Constitution does have a formula. So as a reporter, go to chapter 10 of the Constitution. Take a look at it. And this report, we are going to digitize it, and we're going to make it popular, because our people need to go back into the room of when the debate about the Constitution was taking place, and how Sir Llewellyn Moore, one of the best legal minds in the Caribbean period, was ignored, and how these things that he spoke about are now coming back to haunt us. But nonetheless, I think there's always room for a next generation to look at the matters and to deal with the matters accordingly. Now, you spoke about food, correct? Yeah. With the matter of food, we have to keep our sources diverse. Right now, I think we depend on maybe one major source of food. We need to, of course, produce more food, and we have seen an uptick, and we'll continue to invest in food. But another market, which is the African market, might have a source. We are now in the Caribbean. CARICOM has an agenda, and we just had a major conference here in St. Kitts and Nevis, which deals with agriculture in the Caribbean. And I want to really compliment the Minister of Agriculture for an excellent organization, Honorable Samuel Duggins. And so therefore, we are investing in St. Kitts and Nevis in agriculture. There's some things, for example, what's affecting some of the things, there will always be room for discussion. But there's a significant thrust to make sure we do it. But just to get to Africa, what if Africa has something to offer that would benefit us, benefit the region? Why not? What if the region has something that would benefit Africa? For example, we make things here that Africa may not produce in the agricultural space. What if we can do that? Our high-end stuff, our hot pepper, only St. Kitts make the hot pepper like that. There's a market for that. We, in St. Kitts and Nevis, we might make rum, old world rum. They don't make old world rum in West Africa. We make old world rum. Why we don't send our old world rum to Africa? Right? So I'm saying that it opens up a market, and that's what trade is about. What can I get from you and you get from me? That is trade. And the wider your space of trading is, the more diverse it is, the more resilient you are. Because if you're getting all of your eggs out of one basket, and that egg and that basket drops open, and all your eggs drop, what are you going to do? And therefore, we must be able to seek to trade all around. We send you what you have. If you have something of value we want, we bring it in. Gives us options and diversify our sources and so forth. And so that is what I'm saying. Africa has over 1 billion people, and our trade with Africa is only 1%. That in itself is an embarrassment. That's a new market, a new frontier that can bring development to both Africa and the Caribbean that needs to be explored, just on the basis of that alone, if nothing else. The opportunity, because only one place you can go. Can't go down anymore. It's only up, and anything that goes up will benefit both regions. So I would like to say that we are looking to new markets, not just to get things from, but for us to send things to. That is why I keep saying that we have to look at not just the small population that we have here, but these are large markets. What can we pump into those markets that we produce here in St. Kitts and Nevis that nobody else produces? As I told you, Old World Rum is one of them. Llewellyn pepper sauce. Well, Llewellyn pepper sauce should be making 2,000 bottles. But if she get a market in Africa that want 500,000 bottles because they love the Llewellyn pepper sauce? What if they love the Old World Rum? Instead of making 300 bottles of Old World Rum, you say, boy, I got to step up to 25,000 bottles of Old World Rum because you're opening a new market. So it's not just about getting stuff from them. No, it's about setting up trade because you open up a whole market for me as well so that our people here who produce unique things can access the market by, it being an area where they can do trade and benefit.
Mr. Prime Minister, next year will make 20 years since I'm in this field.
20 years?
20 years.
Wow.
And over all these years, I often hear people talk about the government isn't consulting with the people. Mm-hmm. Is your government looking to change that culture?
Right. So I see what you say. There are different ways in consulting. For example, when we have our budget, we have consultation. And I've said this here, there's always opportunity to consult more. And we should look for it. When I was on the radio recently, on the issue of the sustainability zone, we have said that we want to have town hall meetings on that. For the budget coming up, we'll have at least 3 town hall meetings. One on this side of the island, one on that side of the island, and then another one that would be in Bastia, instead of just having it in Marriott alone. We want to have it at a community center on this side of the island and a community center at that side of the island. So there should always be room, and I'm open to hear suggestions for more consultations, more interaction, more sharing of information. That is critically important. That is why I have a forum like this, where I can sit down with people from the media and we talk about serious things, unfiltered. There's nobody sitting down next to me, just me alone here as the leader of the country, facing the press openly, unfiltered, so that we can discuss the hard issues. And you can ask the hard questions. And therefore, in a sense, that is one of the ways in which you consult, by giving open access to the media. I started sitting down like this with the media, and it wasn't the regular stand up and have a press conference. Nothing is wrong with that if that's your method, but I thought it would be more useful to just sit around and allow the press to ask what they want. And then, I sit down here by this desk and you are here around it or this table, and we just back and forth on the issues. I think it works better that way. It takes away a lot of the tension and formality. People are relaxed and can have a conversation on deep issues. And, most of these questions, I don't know what you're going to ask for the most part, and there's a specific matter for you to ask. And we just have a dialogue. We have the press conference. But we have that, yeah. But we do have press conference.
I think it is more of town hall settings. People want that town hall setting where they can ask questions themselves. They do not want journalists to ask questions for them. And they want to ask their own questions.
And that is why I said that for the budget, instead of having that one that is at Marriott, we'll have 3. One on this side of the country and the next one on that side of the country.
Then, for instance, the SSC, the conversation now is, why didn't they consult with us first?
Right. So let me say a couple of things on the SSC. In every bill that is passed, and probably we have to look at the format, because there's always room for improvement. Do you know that every bill that is passed, it is read first, sent out to the public for discussion, and that discussion is to enrich the debate in Parliament? Yesterday we laid before Parliament a bill, the bill for the establishment of the regulatory body for CBI. The reason why it is done like that, and we don't pass one bill on the same day, is to send it out to the public, so the public can have the opportunity to see it, read it, hear it, and send their input with respect to it. So that is a form of consultation. We have done that. We have taken the decision that we will no longer just go in and just in one sitting pass a bill unless it's an emergency. Outside of that, we want the bill to circulate in the public so that the public can have their input on it. But a lot of the times we recognize that that method may not be working, or as it should, or because the public was never really educated on how that consultation is done to enrich the debate. Maybe what we need to do is to look at the format. When the SSD went out, they was not passed in one sitting. Again, it was laid before the Parliament, sent out for people to debate it, look at it, to influence the debate in Parliament. That is how it actually supposed to work. Now, you made a very good point. When I was on the radio, there's a lady who called in, and I think her name is Willa Franks, and she made a suggestion. She said, why not have a town hall on it? And we are going to have a town hall. 2 things I did. Made the bill available, 100 copies at government headquarters. You can just come and pick up a copy. No charge. I told them to give it free because I saw the debate behind it. And secondly, we have a town hall. I spoke to the AG today about organizing the town hall. Let me say a couple of things on the bill. The bill really protects St. Kitts and Nevis, because at some point, every country will develop economic zones and call them different type of things, but they're really economic zones for economic development. What we did with that bill is put the guardrails. There were never any guardrails. As a matter of fact, everything that they said that the bill is supposed to do is the bill is doing the complete opposite. Are you going to affect the sovereignty? The bills protect sovereignty. Or are you going to take land? The bill said, no, you have to come with your land. Government ain't going to give no land like that to establish an SSZ. You have to look at the bill. He said to come with your land. So when people talk about You'll have your own police and this. I say, which bill are they talking about? That is why I made the bill available, because I say, is this the bill they're talking about? Now, if somebody looked at the bill and said, look, I have an issue with the bill here, because they read the bill and look at the bill, that's a different story. But you had people who are peddling absolute falsehoods on the bill. And you're like, which bill are they talking about? And therefore, when you look at the SSD, and sometimes that is where reporters can help. If there's a discussion around the bill and we made the bill available, you have your platform, put it up and say, the government has made the bill available. We use our medium as this particular source, and we are also allowing access to the bill. And allow people to come in and have a meaningful, let them go through the bill. Let's discuss the bill. What does it say in this part of the bill, that part of the bill? Because what I have seen is really, you have freedom of speech, but people can really abuse it. That is what I call abusing the freedom of speech, to willfully mislead people. And then I hear the opposition, some members from the opposition talking. And when the bill was debated, they couldn't be found. They got the bill beforehand to review it to see if they have issues to bring to Parliament. They did not do that. And when the bill was being debated, they still could not be found. And then after the bill is passed, they're out there grandstanding. So why are you paid to come to Parliament? Why did the people vote for you to come to Parliament? Bring the richness of the discussion in Parliament so that that can be part of making information more available to the people. That's what the debate in Parliament is supposed to do. So if you have somebody who is elected to Parliament, you have a bill that you're now saying is such a bill. So where was your voice? Where was your input? Where were your questions? Nothing, nada. And then after the fact, you're running behind and saying, oh, the bill, but I didn't hear your voice on it. So that is what I'm saying. The disingenuous approach by some is really a big problem. But when the people ask questions, and genuine questions, because there are people with genuine questions, they must be answered. That is why I went on radio with the AG. And that is why I asked the AG to set up a town hall meeting. And that is why I made the bill available at government headquarters to just pass and pick up. If we copy and read it for yourself, and if it is challenging to read because not everybody is a lawyer, I mean, whatever it is, we want to give more opportunities for people to understand truthfully what is in the bill. And if there's something in the bill that is concerning, that can be better, that can be changed, we will be open to that. But not what I'm hearing. There are those who have maliciously misled the population on what the bill actually does. The bill actually create the guardrails to make sure that any zone that is set up, sovereignty is protected. Our laws are protected. And we will set up in the bill a monitoring committee. That committee is to say, are they violating your laws? And if they're violating your laws, there will be consequences. This is what we are simply saying. And so we will have that town hall meeting, and that is separate to the expanded number of town hall meetings for the budget itself. So I welcome your suggestion. I welcome you saying that maybe more consultation, and I'm open enough and humble enough to respect that and to say to us that we're going to do it. But I just want you to know also that we are already on that path to have more consultations.
Since we are offering suggestions, I have 2 suggestions on that same issue.
Yes.
Utilize the media. We don't
Yes.
have a dog in the fight to moderate these town halls.
Yes.
Invite us to do it because it gives the air of transparency, since we don't have a stake in being for or against whatever it is being discussed, and we bring some balance to the
Right.
conversation. The other one would be, as we're talking about, I think the whole thing about gazetting and you have the first reading and it goes to the public is when people used to sit down together and have conversations. Communities were
But it's
smaller.
not happening.
It's not happening now because
Right.
it's changed and how we communicate has changed. So
Yeah.
maybe set up an email address or something within the office of the CABSEC or AG where we can direct these sorts of comments.
So we pass a bill in the House where the Gazette can only, it was only being accepted once it's printed in hard copy. But now we pass a bill to say it can now be used electronic media for it. So we are going to implement that. So you'll have a place where you can go and see all the bills passed, and you'll also be able to make your comments in there. So we already passed the bill.
Fantastic.
So we should be implementing that very, very soon. So your point is definitely
So I'm
taken.
going to ask my question now, since we're having discussion today. The last question I have to ask really is to, in a roundabout, we go back to this whole United Nations, Caribbean, North America relations sort of situation. And it speaks to you becoming chairman of CARICOM in January as well. How do we feel as a region, the United States deploying warships into the Caribbean? I'm assuming, based on how the United States of America, generally speaking, does things, that we would not have had much prior notice. I know that we operate our own independent national security agencies throughout the region, and then we have things like RSS and so on. We have a long relationship with Southcom, so it is not unusual to have military warships in the Caribbean at any time. But when we start to hear about possible military action within the Caribbean, that changes the dynamic, because we have always boasted that we're probably the last peaceful zone in the world, war-free zone in the world. Now, I asked that question because if we have the United States deploying warships into the Caribbean, we already have some volatility with the situation with Guyana and Venezuela. I think we all agree that the Caribbean is not the final stop, but the conduit for these, because he said this is about drug trade. I can accept that. The Caribbean is not the final destination for either drugs or the ammunition that tends to end up in our small islands causing a problem. It's the conduit for it. So I don't think in principle we would be against that. But again, I want to drive this home. How do we feel about warships and military action taking place in our Caribbean waters?
Right. So I think CARICOM would have put out a statement on that. Let me tell you, drug interdiction is very important. And for the same reason, guns as well. And we believe that action should be taken against those who would want to transship drugs and guns across the region. Our position is that we want to maintain our region as a zone of peace. There are issues, and there might be issues with violence, interpersonal relationship, transnational. But what we don't have in the region is any declared war. We don't know in the Caribbean what war is. Believe me, there's a big difference between having gang violence and war. Big difference between both. And so there has not been any declared war in the region for maybe 200 years. That means that the people in the region generally believe that there should be no war. That we should not resolve things with war. That is what we believe fundamentally. That is why we have not had any declaration of war in the region for such a long time. And so we in the CARICOM, we will do everything while we deal with the drug matter to really work to maintain that there is no declaration of war in the region. It would affect us negatively. If there's declaration of war, you think the cruise ship would come? They would not come. Plane going to question whether they should fly or not. So your tourism gone in. Your trade is affected. It's a small region. How would you survive? This is a matter of survival for us. And therefore, that is why, and even outside the region, wherever there is war, we in St. Kitts and Nevis, we ask for peace. We are friends of all, enemies of none, or enemy of none. That was used by a former Caribbean leader, and I think that excellently explained our diplomatic position. Friend of all, enemy of none. And we will always speak on the side of peace, whether it's in Gaza, Ukraine, Taiwan Strait, wherever there's threat of war or war, we will always ask for peace and to allow dialogue and diplomacy to be the way out of differences and conflict. That is our principled position. And we can do that while fighting drugs, transshipment, and all these things that are affecting our Caribbean societies negatively. But I would say that those who transship drugs and those who are into guns, they should not feel comfortable anywhere, because these things are wreaking havoc on societies. Just yesterday, there was a mass murder, a mass shooting in Jamaica. Sunday. And I'm sure that none of those guns, or the gun that was used, was not manufactured in Jamaica. So, so it's really affecting the Caribbean life and life as we know it here. But you have raised a very good point, and we should continue. And even if the press has a point of view, where is the press position on this? I would like to see the press write a position on this to enrich the discussion and the argument, because the press should also seek to enrich the argument and the discussion and help to focus, consultation. There's nothing wrong with a member of the press organizing a forum to discuss a particular bill. I would love to see that. I will sit down and watch it. Yes. Huh? Man, are you so good? Yes. Oh, you need all the fancy because you all have a medium already. Each of you have a medium, and you could ask sponsor for it. You just say, we are having a discussion today on consultation about a particular piece of legislation.
Public discourse will access SKNS.
Yes. But, just because you don't want to say SKNS is owned by the government and would influence it, that is why we have free press in St. Kitts and Nevis, You could sit around a table like this and ask the Prime Minister anything. That is transparency. That is a free press. And you come back week after week because nobody is pursuing you in any negative way. You have the opportunity to come and be free in your mind and ask questions as members of the independent media. But I'm simply saying that the press can be a part of the discussion as well, the discourse, the healthy discourse. Bring in an expert. You got people around here who will come on your radio without charging you $1. Call up, I have the SSZ and I have a lot to talk about. You don't come on my show and let us discuss the SSZ. Right? No, I'm just saying that, or whatever the bill might be, Man, I see the Prime Minister support something at the UN. Come, let's discuss that. Well, what did the Prime Minister support? Because you want that different view on things. So I think the press also, and I encourage the press, should have, its own way of making sure that it enhances the public discourse so that everybody is doing his or her part, and at the end of the day, we are able to make sure that the citizenry is engaged. That is why you have a free press, because it allows the government to engage with the citizenry as well. Because if we go to the citizenry and the press has its role, because you have to interact with the citizenry, and when you have a free press, that also is a pivotal. Some people call it, you have the government, you have the private sector and so forth. I mean, it's one of the aspects or one of the pillars of a democracy, a free press. And so I encourage the press to also do its part. All right, so I think we have been here for a little while.
Closing statements.
Right, so thank you very much, Press Secretary, Mr. Javan Libad. Let me thank all those who are around the table. Thank you for your interaction. Thank you for your questions as well. And I want to thank the people of St. Kitts and Nevis for joining me today and joining us today in this healthy discussion about very critical and important matters that are facing, that our country is facing at this particular time. I encourage us to continue to make sure that we stay in tune, we stay in touch, we ask those challenging questions, we make suggestions so that we can help to advance St. Kitts and Nevis. As I've said before, I am always open to suggestion of more consultation. That's an excellent one. And I will continue to make sure that where there is room for improvement, we must have room for improvement. And so if we continue to do that, St. Kitts and Nevis will definitely have a bright future. Let me say that the Africa-Caribbean relationship is a new paradigm in this sense, and has tangible benefits for all of our peoples. Let me say that when it comes to the SSZ, that the law is clear in protecting St. Kitts and Nevis. When it comes to Ritz-Carlton and the land at the southeast, I want to say again, we never owned it. The private people has the opportunity to develop within the law what they wish to develop. If there are those who are there because they're squatting, the government is willing to assist them to get to a place where they're not squatting, or the government assists them to get to, so that you can have a win-win situation. The hotel bills, and they get a place to carry out their business. But, right, they have not pulled out. They want that matter to be resolved. And so we will continue to see a number of development projects here. And we'll continue to push for St. Kitts and Nevis to get a diversified economy and opportunities for our people, and for us to get ever closer to a sustainable island state. So I want to thank all of you for joining me this afternoon. Until then, may God bless all of you. Thank you very much.